Today's episode of Variant is brought to you by Domain.com. Today on Variant, I talk about my 5 favorite Flash storylines. Welcome to Variant, where we love comics more than I hate waiting for a parking spot only to realize that person is just dropping something off at their car and not leaving. I'm your host, Arris. Since The Flash has some of the spotlight right now in the comic book world due to his new series premiering last week on CW, I figured I'd talk about 5 of my favorite Flash stories. And since these are my 5 favorite Flash stories, they're also my Flash reading recommendations for people looking for some good Flash storylines. But now it's time to peel back the curtain and see what my picks are. Before I get into my picks, I do want to say these are just my personal favorite Flash stories. So a lot of you may agree with my picks and a lot of you may not, which is fine on both accounts. So if a story didn't make the list that you think should, that's fine. There's no right or wrong with these types of lists. It's just all personal preference. With that said, kicking off my list at number 5 is Crisis on Infinite Earths. Crisis on Infinite Earths was one of the biggest events in the DC universe. It erased the DC multiverse and rebooted many DC hero origins. It also marked the end of the Silver Age and Bronze Age of comic books. Crisis on Infinite Earths is one of the most well-known stories in comic books because it's known for erasing the multiverse, as I just said, even though, like all things in comic books, it eventually came back. But why is it relevant for The Flash? Well, that's because it's also famous for being the story where Barry Allen Flash dies. I know that's not a spoiler, that storyline is more than 25 years old. What would be a spoiler is telling you how it happened, which I'm not going to do, as I don't want to ruin it for any of you. Just know it was one of the more shocking comic book deaths, not to mention one of the longest lasting deaths in comic books. His death lasted for 23 years. But yes, this is a monumental point in Flash's history since, well, he died. So not only should every Flash fan check this out, every DC comic fan in general should. At number 4 is The Return of Barry Allen. This series was originally published in 1992 in Flash issue 74 through 79. It's a fan favorite and came out when Superman was still dead and right before Batman's back was broken by Bane. The story follows Wally West, who has worked hard to make the Flash identity his own, all the while still feeling unworthy of Barry Allen's legacy. And like everyone else, he was stunned when Barry Allen returns from the dead. But Barry seems angry and upset and soon lets Wally know he wants the Flash mantle back, deeming Wally unworthy of it. Barry becomes violent, savagely beating people, and then trying to kill Wally. Needless to say, this is all out of character for Barry Allen, so something is very wrong. There is a pretty cool twist at the end, which if you listen carefully to my number 2 pick, you will most likely be able to figure out what that twist is. But alas, I've already said too much, so I'll just leave it at that. You'll just have to read it and find out. Just know it's a great read. Writer Mark Waid did a fantastic job. It's definitely a classic Flash story. At number 3 is Flash of Two Worlds. This is a landmark comic book story that was published in Flash issue 123 in September of 1961. It's not only a great Flash comic, but it's the comic that introduces Earth 2 and more generally the concept of the multiverse to DC Comics. The story was written by Gardner Fox and drawn by Carmine Infantino. Without giving too much away, the plot revolves around Barry Allen Flash, vibrating his molecules so fast he suddenly disappears and finds himself outside Keystone City, the hometown of the Golden Age Flash, Jay Garrick. The Flash recognizes the name of Keystone City as the fictional hometown of his childhood comic book hero, Jay Garrick, the original Flash. Barry recalls that the comic book writer Gardner Fox created stories of Jay Garrick for the Flash comics based on dreams that he had experienced. He figures that he must have vibrated between the dimensional barriers separating parallel worlds and that he's arrived on an Earth similar to the one he just left. Of course, this Earth would later be called Earth 2. On this Earth, the Golden Age Flash was an actual living superhero who had retired the year his comic book series was canceled on Earth. This storyline is just really fun, and it also introduces Earth 2, which I and so many other people love. So if you love that the DC Golden Age characters were eventually revived, thank this comic. Coming in at number 2 is Flash Rebirth. This storyline is one of the most loved Flash stories of all time, and that's for good reason. It's a 6-issue miniseries that focuses on the return of Barry Allen to the DC Universe after his resurrection in Final Crisis. It's written by one of my favorite writers, Geoff Johns, and drawn by one of my favorite artists, Ethan Van Sciver. As much as I've come to love Wally West, as soon as Barry Allen returned, I was like, yes, my favorite Flash is back. Geoff Johns did a great job of showing us Barry as a man out of time. A lot changed while Barry was gone. Some of his friends have died, allies have turned to enemies, there's a bunch of new heroes, and the list goes on. The story throws in a major plot point that changed the entire Flash mythos and shows us why Barry is the one true Flash. We find out that Barry isn't part of the Speed Force, he actually created the Speed Force. All the DC Universe speedsters derive their speed from him, so being the huge Barry Allen fan that I am, that was just one more plus for me. Jeff Johns also retcons some history that explains why Barry Allen became a police forensic scientist. It's just a great read and a perfect reintroduction for the Flash to the modern DC Universe. Not to mention, Ethan Van Sciver's art is fantastic. It perfectly captures the Flash's speed and motion. This is definitely one Flash story you have to read. And my number one pick is Flashpoint. Now, a lot of people may or may not agree with me on this one. It's still a relatively new Flash comic, only being 3 years old. But I personally believe this storyline is already a classic. Every time someone asks me what's a good Flash story to read, Flashpoint is one of the first titles I recommend. The comic is written by, yet again, Jeff Johns and drawn by Andy Kubert. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably know what Flashpoint is about, since most of you have probably seen Flashpoint Paradox, the animated movie, which was based off the Flashpoint comic. And might I just add, they stuck pretty dang close to the comic. But for those of you who haven't seen the movie or read the comic, the story focuses on there being ripples in the DC Universe timeline, which puts Barry Allen in an alternate reality where his mother is no longer dead and the Justice League no longer exists. So of course Barry Allen must figure out how to fix the timelines. For those of you who don't know, Flashpoint is a very important story to the DC Universe in general, because it's the story that's responsible for creating the New 52. When Flash fixed the timeline, it merged with the DC Universe, the Wildstorm Universe, and the Vertigo Universe. Obviously this ended up changing little things here and there, explaining the differences in characters' origins and why some things no longer exist in the New 52 continuity. So if you're a fan of the New 52, thank this story. It's also just a great Flash story in general, because I think it captures everything all of us have come to love about the Flash, like the power of the Speed Force and just showcasing how important of a character the Flash is to the DC Universe and how drastic of an impact he has on it. Anyway, these are just my favorite Flash stories, but like I said earlier, I'm sure you guys have different lists, which is perfectly fine. There are tons of other great Flash stories out there, like Born to Run, Flash Terminal Velocity, Flash Move Forward, Flash Out of Time, and so many more. I can't even mention them all. But I'm curious to see what your lists are, so post them down in the comment section below. Did you know DC and Marvel own the word superhero? Yeah, I'm not lying, that's completely true. They have a trademark on the word superhero together, meaning no other company besides them can use the word superhero, legally that is. Now you may be asking, how can they both own the word superhero together? Basically, both Marvel and DC realized the amount of money that the mark superhero was worth, so they decided to trademark the word. However, both companies understood that they wouldn't have a chance by themselves, as both companies were using the term. So a battle between the two would likely result in neither of them being granted a trademark, so they decided instead to work together against any other company out there trying to use the term and file for a trademark. Clearly they won, and now they own the word superhero. See? They can work together. It doesn't always have to be competition. When you buy a domain name from domain.com, you get the power to influence and control what people find when they search for you online. No domain extension will help you tell your story like a .com or .net domain name. Domain.com is affordable, reliable, and easy to use. The guys at domain.com gave Variants an awesome offer. Get 15% off domain.com's already affordable domain names and web hosting when you use the coupon code VARIANT at checkout. So when you think domain names, think domain.com. First up for Wednesday, October 15th, we have Miles Morales' Ultimate Spider-Man issue 6. Miles' life has been turned upside down in every conceivable way. With new villains appearing left and right, Miles must make a life-changing decision. Now we have the Death of Wolverine issue 4. This is the final issue to the Death of Wolverine miniseries. Do I really have to say why you should be reading this? I mean, it's the Death of Wolverine. Next we have Batman Superman issue 15. This series has been really fun. It's definitely a good team-up book, plus the art is amazing. And finally we have Justice League issue 35. The Amazo virus starts here, and Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor join Wayne Enterprises and LexCorp. Find out what makes them team up. Well, that brings another episode of Variant to a close, but before I leave you guys, people are always asking me where I get all of my comic book t-shirts, like this one, and more often than not, I get them from Jack of All Trades Clothing. I've become an affiliate with them, so if you use the coupon code 20% off DC on October 15th, you'll get 20% off any DC shirt. But remember, the code only works on October 15th, so if you're watching the show on October 15th, enjoy 20% off. Also, be sure to like our Variant Facebook page to keep up with the show in all things comic related. You can also follow this guy on Twitter at twitter.com/Arris_Quiñones. But I will see you kitties next week when I talk about all things comics. So recently in these outtakes, I've been having staring contests with you guys, but today I'm gonna change it up a little bit and we're gonna play rock, paper, scissors. Best 2 out of 3 wins. Ready? Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Rock, paper, scissors, shoot. Did I win? Did you win? Was it a tie? I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below.